It's time for the main event. It's the Shoe Shine.
All right, everybody. You know what time it is? It's Monday night. It's the return of the Shoe Shine. I'm your host, Dave from the 408, coming to you from my studio in San Jose, California. Joining me tonight, my co-host all the way from the city of brotherly love, Mr. Phillies, Drew Evo. What up? What up, Drew?
What up?
And you know what? It goes without saying that this is a very special week because it's St. Patrick's Day, but also we got the return of our friend, Mr. Raw Boxing TV, Ranger. Gracias y qué pasa, homie?
Oh, man, it's a pleasure to be here. You know, I'm constantly busy, in and out of town, different states, but I'm here today. You extended the invitation, and here we are, brother.
And likewise, man, we always love being on your on Raw Boxing TV because that Saturday stuff, when you go live with your fam, it's turned out to be a great success and giving people a place to chime and chat with other It's like being in the living room with a bunch of family members and boxing friends just hanging out, man. I love that. I love that. And this weekend was very special because we had the rematch that we're all still talking about, Estrada versus Chocolatito 2. And of course, we also had another rematch. The ladies put on a great show with McCaskill and Breakhouse, the first lady of boxing, that rematch. And David Benavidez, 168-pound former champion, trying to make a case for himself that he deserves the Canelo fight first. So let's get right to that. But first, a shout out to everyone from Leave It in the Ring family. You guys can subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts and catch this one and all the other great shows. Shout out to David, Milcar, D Styles, G Funky, and the rest of the family. And without getting into the show first, guys, I want to say rest in peace to the family of Marvelous Marvin Hagler, one of the greatest middleweights. At the end of the show, I'd like your thoughts on maybe one of your favorite fights, classic fights, because he was one of the greatest middleweight champions ever. So let's get right into the show. With the Chocolatito 2 versus Estrada. I'm wearing a shirt that says "Feeling Lucky" in honor of St. Patrick's Day. But my wife was saying, did Estrada get lucky? Ranger, did Estrada get lucky with that scorecard?
The scorecards were a bit of a mess. But was he the correct winner in my book that night? Yes. Now, we can sit here and argue all night about the scorecards, and that's perfectly fine because we all have a different way of looking at the fights. But I definitely don't agree with that judge from Venezuela. Let's go ahead and put it out like that. And I believe he has been suspended, as effective immediately. Starting today, he was suspended. But in my book, to me, Estrada won that fight. There was a lot of things he was doing that he was not being given credit for. One of those things was being able to sink his body work behind Chocolatito's elbows. People were more focused on him, the way he was landing, throwing to the body, and Chocolatito was so successfully catching his body shots to his elbow. But that wasn't the case 100% of the time. Estrada was very successful on coming in a little closer and hooking his arms even more to be able to go behind the elbow. And I think that's where a lot of people fail to realize that there was a lot more going on. But unfortunately today, a lot of us, when we're watching a boxing match, we're headhunters, right? We're only looking at what's going on upstairs, but we seem to ignore the very successful work that goes up downstairs.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. And those scorecards were Jesse Reyes had it 115 to 113 in favor of Chocolatito, and David Sutherland, a very well-noted judge, had it 115 to 113 in favor of Juan Estrada. Drew, this guy from Venezuela, Carlos Sucre, the WBA has suspended him for the scorecard 117-111. And of course, that gets into people speculating about being paid off. Your thoughts on that scorecard?
Ridiculous. I don't know what the hell he was watching. I bet you he was on his phone, probably texting somebody most of the night. But I don't know. It was a close fight. And if you didn't think that was a close fight, you're an idiot and shouldn't be even judging boxing. Shouldn't have nothing to do with boxing.
So I was in Rangers' room on Saturday night, and you were making a great case that a lot of Estrada's punches, a lot of the work Estrada was doing was kind of being outshined by the volume of punching Chocolatito was doing, but the cleaner, more effective shots in many rounds were being landed by Estrada. So at the end of the night, I wasn't upset about that. I wasn't upset about a close fight if it would have gone in either direction. But the 117-11 people today are still really upset. Ranger, do you think this going forward sets a precedent in judging?
I think what it should do is bring forth some sort of consequences for the judges. I was listening to a show earlier on Punch, Mr. Moonshine, and he brought up something that was talked about. I believe I have a video on that specific subject he was talking about. I believe I uploaded a video back in 2009 in regards to this, where we should have the judges or the networks get with whoever's editing the show that night, and at the end of each and every single round, they should make available for us fans the official scorecard at the end of every single round. Why? Because what that will do is create a pressure on the judges to be accurate. If we use that system, then at the end of the fight, you're not going to see these judges taking 5, 6, 7 minutes to produce a scorecard that should have already been done, because you should be judging and keeping record of it round by round. But when we get fights like this, or when we get fights where there's a clear favorite fighter and the fight doesn't go the way the money was expecting to go, that's when you see the 5 minutes, 6 minutes, and we're still waiting on the judges. And all of a sudden, cha-ching, the rabbit comes out of the hat, and we have one of those controversial decisions. So I think that it should set a precedent for a better solution when it comes to fixing this issue. I think that if judges were forced by the Athletics Commission of whatever state of producing their scorecard round by round after every round, and just have the editor just pop it in the same way they do the unofficial scorecard, do the same thing with the official scorecards. I think that right there will prevent a lot of quote unquote robberies or wrong decisions in the sport of boxing.
Mm-hmm. And shout out to G Funky and A-Rod, who are joining us in the chat. Drew, the state of Texas has had a lot of controversial decisions over the years. One of the most famous ones, I was a big fan of Paulie Malignaggi when he fought Baby Bull Diaz, and he felt he was robbed in that town, in the state of Texas as well. Is this a pattern in the state of Texas to you?
Yes, it is.
But let's not remember, they're going to get a bunch of big fights.
But here's the thing about Texas. I think Texas is the biggest BS state athletic commission as the boxing. Like, they have so many bad decisions, it's not even funny. And here's the problem. Even if the dude's not from Texas, for some reason, they still have a controversial decision. So at the end of the day, maybe the athletic commission's got to do something to make sure that not these cards can come out and, these BS cards come out of nowhere again. But you're always going to have BS scores in boxing. Somebody's always going to be a dumbass and think that they saw a totally different fight than mostly everybody else did.
Yeah, G Funky had a really good show on HCP Uncensored last week. Now, they were discussing the famous Lara versus Canelo fight that I know that's a hot topic for a lot of people, including Drew Evo there. And it was almost a preview of what was going to happen this weekend, because that was a very close fight as well. That was controversial. Some people still have in their minds Lara winning that fight.
Lara winning.
I am winning.
Yeah, okay, so this entire panel has it, but they'll think we're crazy over there on that show. But today I'm hearing that Canelo Alvarez, that Texas may very well get the fight with Billy Joe Saunders, Drew, because that's what Eddie Hearn is hinting at today in the boxing media, that fight actually may not take place in Vegas like Canelo wants. They think it may work out in the best interest to have it in Texas, with the stadiums being, they've already got the blueprint in place for a big stadium. Your thoughts on that?
I still think he's gonna win. Screw it.
You still, right? If you haven't kept up, G Funky says he's scholar. So it was a very heated show, and it always brings a heated discussion. And this week we'll probably be discussing this fight for a long time. But Ranger, at the end of the day, there's been a lot of close calls, like Manny Pacquiao, Timothy Bradley, that happened in Las Vegas. Is the true winner the fans? Despite, I don't like to see anybody get a loss that they didn't deserve. I'm Mexican American, and a lot of Mexican Americans, like even the commentator Sergio Mora, had it for Chocolatito. Is the real fans, is the winners, the fans of boxing, that we may see a trilogy as early as this year?
I've never seen an athlete that wins a gold medal when presented with the gold medal saying, "Nah, I don't want it, because I don't want the way it was given to me." My question is, why are boxing fans complaining so much about the decision of this fight when they won at the end of the night? They got to see a legendary fight. They got to see a fight like we're not used to seeing that often in boxing, right? And when presented with that gift, their main focus is on the outcome of the night.
Right.
It shouldn't be like that. How about we just push for that third one now? How about we focus on how great for boxing this fight was? Not only this fight. I believe the girls gave us a good show as well. But this fight, there shouldn't be any complaint. Just like you, I always want to see the right winner wins. In my book, contrary to a lot of people, the correct guy won that night. Sergio Mora had for Chocolatito. So many other boxers, if you went to Twitter, so many other boxers had it for Estrada. So that's the beauty about this fight. It was so intense. It was so competitive that you can put 50 people in the ring, in a room, and I guarantee you 25 will see it one way, 25 will see it another. So what does that tell you? Forget about the result. Let's push for the third one. Let's keep infusing our boxing high, if you will. Because at the end of the day, a person like me, I'm addicted to great fights. Last Saturday, I got my high.
Oh, most definitely.
I got nothing to complain.
The thing that's the beauty, one of the things of beauty is that neither of these people had undefeated records anymore. So there wasn't that on the line. We know Chocolatito's going to be a Hall of Famer. He may go in the first round. He's already accomplished what Alexis Arguello, one of the greatest fighters from Nicaragua, he's already maybe surpassed that. So because there's already losses on their records, we can see this trilogy and enjoy the trilogy for what it's going to be. Just probably outdo the performance of the first one. But Drew, I see you on your phone. The fight between Valdez and G Funky was in the room. Shout out to G Funky, and Bella Bling's just joined us. Shout out to Bella Bling. You predicted that the Valdez fight versus Burchell would be in favor of Valdez, but everyone else that I talked to, the fans thought that was going to be a barn burner and that fight was going to be a contender for fight of the year. That didn't play out. That actually turned out to be somewhat of a boxing clinic from Valdez. Right? So Saturday, I think we're walking away with the consensus that the true winners are all boxing fans. We're going to see a trilogy most likely. Drew, people want to know about this Billy Joe Saunders fight. People are asking already. And D-Styles took, you're very adamant, you're very passionate. You think Billy Joe Saunders is going to walk away with the win. We've talked about the pie bet, but we haven't announced it officially. Is it on your mind? Is the pie bet on your mind?
Nothing's on my mind. The only thing that's on my mind is I can't mention it on air. But I'm gonna tell you something. They can brag all they want that I'm nuts for picking Billy Joe Saunders. But here's the problem. They think Canelo is invincible. And you guys seen the flaws in his game. And you got to realize, 168, he's not as fast as he was at 168, at 154, 160. He's a little bit slower now. And Billy Joe is used to being at a 160, 168. So you got to realize, he's a southpaw. Canelo has problems with southpaws. And this is going to be just like the Law fight. And people are going to say, oh, that's Law. That's that's back then. Yeah, he's improved, but he hasn't. All he fought since Laura was punchers, guys that's gonna stand in front of him and throw at him. They thought Callum Smith was gonna do it. Callum Smith just stood in front of him and threw punches. So here's the thing about Billy Joe. Billy Joe's gonna keep moving. Billy Joe's gonna be able to cut that wing off of Canelo. Canelo's not gonna be able to cut the wing off of Billy Joe Sanders because the guy keeps moving.
I'm smiling. I'm smiling because I shouldn't have brought up this fight first. I wanted to bring in David Benavidez and his results later in the show. I should. Ladies first. We haven't talked about McCaskill and Breakhouse yet. Unless Raw wants to jump in on this one. Canelo fans are getting mad when I say Canelo has a hard time cutting off the ring. Yes, G-Funky has had a lot of heat, and I was smiling because I'm wondering if you and G-Funky are going to be on the same page for that bet. But Raw,
he ain't going to be on the same page with me. He's picking Canelo. We already know.
G-Funky didn't make his announcement. He hasn't made
I already know it. I already know he's going to pick Canelo.
I don't know. We haven't made any of those official picks. Rod, do you want to jump in on that or move on to McCaskill Breakhouse?
We could talk about this, but I definitely want some shine on the girls. But
let's do the shine on the girls and get back to the David Benavidez fight right after this one. So another rematch on DAZN was the ladies, and I know that you watched the first fight very closely, and I didn't have much expectations, but Ra, you did a great job covering that fight live on Saturday. The ladies, while I was tuning into the David fight live, had both screens going. Is it time for Cecilia Breakhouse, who's done a lot? Is it time for her to retire?
Yes, precisely. I had Drew on my show yesterday, and we were talking about this. I think it's time. There comes a time in a boxer's life or in a boxer's career where you have to decide what do you want your legacy to be at. I think Breakhouse is at that point. Do you want to continue and retire as being the first lady of boxing, the one that lost twice to only one person? Very clear. You see two losses, but not against two people. Only one person. Do you want to retire like that? Or do you want to continue to box, keep losing, becoming a punching bag to the new bloods in the sport? Or do you want to retire with that stained legacy of becoming a punching bag at the end of your career? Or do you want to retire as the first lady of boxing? I think if I was in her shoes, I would want to be retiring as the first lady of boxing. She's done so great in her career. She's done so great for female boxing. Look, we often think of top female boxers, Layla Ali, Ann Wolfe. Correct, and they were, but this woman right here, this woman, almost 40 professional fights, only 2 losses to one person. Are we gonna sit here and pretend like that's an easy achievement? No, it isn't. So listen, at the end of the day, she's facing that one thing that there is no cure for. It's called age, right? When age comes knocking at your door, you got to open. Because if you don't, she's going to break right through it. And I think right now, age is her biggest enemy. And listen, just call it a day. Retire on top. And there's things that you can do to be involved in the sport of boxing. You make it grow in your country, your country where you grow. We can see the Hall of Famer, Christy Martin. She became a promoter, working very close with Don King in hopes to land that future star to push her company out there. There's so many things that you can still do to be involved in the sport of boxing aside from fighting. I think if I was her, I would want to go that route.
Mm-hmm. Drew, the prior week was all about the ladies too. We had Women's International Day. We talked about that. We saw Clarissa Shields. Now she's a champion in 2 weight classes simultaneously. We saw probably arguably the best MMA female fighter in the world dominate again. Next week, this coming up Thursday, actually this week, Thursday, I believe on Ring City USA, the ladies will also be having a couple of spectacular ladies fights. But McCaskill, you've watched her now twice. Do you think McCaskill is a future star, Drew?
I'm very iffy on it. She's cute, but I'm iffy on it. I'm going to be honest why I'm iffy on it. Because like she's 36,
Right.
and she's technically almost out of her prime.
Correct.
Like Breakus is out of her prime, and she lost to a 36-year-old. That's almost out of her prime and everything. Like imagine if Breakus was in her prime and everything. I think Breakus would have easily beat McCaskill.
Let me just be clear. When you say out of their prime, you are not speaking. You're speaking strictly about their athletic career, right? Because there's a lot of beautiful women in their 30s and 40s. So you're not talking about looks here.
Drew ain't talking about looks. Trust me. We ain't talking about looks.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Because as the shirt says, feeling lucky, I would like to hear later that Mr. Philly Irish on St. Patrick's Day may get lucky. You could at him at Drew Evo.
Thanks, Dave. Shout out. Appreciate it. But this is what I think. It's very iffy. But the thing is, she did give Katie Taylor the best fight of her career. Like, gave her the most problems and everything. And that's probably the next fight for McCaskill is fighting Katie Taylor and everything. Or Clarissa Shields. She called out Clarissa Shields too. To have her come down to 147. But she only really has maybe at most 4 years left in a career. And like they only have like 11 or 12 fights in her career. And her trainer actually quit his job.
So McCaskill, what I'm gathering is McCaskill's doing the right move by calling out some of these big name fights like Taylor or Clarissa Shields because time, like you said, time is ticking. There's very few fighters that are still in their prime in their mid 30s as far as men go. So this is the right move for her. She's got the spotlight on her. DAZN's doing a great job with the women fights. And you think that's a good move, right?
It is the right move to do. You're undisputed champion. You gotta really challenge yourself now and get the biggest paydays now because you don't know how long your career is gonna be. Like Breakus and everything, Breakus can easily land another fight with a big star like Clarissa Shields or maybe a Katie Taylor or something. But at the end of the day, I agree with Ranger. She should retire. She's my opinion, the greatest woman boxer of all time. When I hear people trying to go on Twitter and say Clarissa Shields is the greatest woman boxer of all time, I was like, are you serious? You're saying that since she undisputed in 2 weight classes that probably only have 17 fighters at most in it, and maybe half of that rankings, half of them are under 500 when it comes to record-wise, and we don't know nobody. The best fighter she fought was Christina Hammer, and tell you the truth, I don't think a lot of people ever heard of Christina Hammer at the end of the day. So who has Clarissa Shields fight? Nobody. And I'm not hating on her and everything, but look at the resume. Look how many, do your research. Look how many fighters are in that weight division of women's boxing. And you'll see my point at the end of the day. That there's not a lot of women in that division. And tell you the truth, you could clean it out easily. Like, that's how it is. And, like, it's unfortunate, but the more boxers are in the lower weight classes in women's boxing, unfortunately. But at the end of the day, she called Breakus out, but Breakus said, hey, move down to my weight and fight me.
Correct. And if I may jump on this, because it's very important that we talk about this, because listen, at the end of the day, the queen here, the real queen here is McCaskill. And McCaskill said it better. You know, I'll take Katie Taylor. If Clarissa Shields wants it, she can come down to my weight division and she can get it. Right? When it comes to Clarissa Shields, just like Drew Evo, I'm not hating on her. She is a very good fighter, right? But her chances, because of the skills, I do give her, she's the more skillful fighter out of her weight division. But that's because her weight division, right, is this small. I do give her the credit for the Olympics, but notice how timing was perfect, right? the Olympics was fairly young for female boxing. All credit to her, because anybody, any other women in the world could have won any of those gold medals. But when we start throwing that term at her, the greatest female boxer of all time, it's nothing but PR. And you as a fan, as a boxing fan, should not allow yourself to be deceived in that manner, because here's why. When they call her pound for pound best female of all time, let's be real. This Claressa, best of the best Claressa Shield against a past prime Ann Wolfe. Ann Wolfe will eat that woman alive. Best Claressa Shields versus Layla Ali. Layla Ali would destroy her. Best Claressa Shields versus the Puerto Rican fighter. What's her name? Trying to think.
Amanda Serrano.
Serrano. Psh, boy, I'm telling you. It's crazy. Give me a second. I'll go mute. I got a very important phone call. I'll go mute. Sorry.
Sounds good.
Might I come back in on this, Dave? Now, to be honest, women's boxing is getting a lot of heat because, like, there's not a lot of knockouts in it because it's 2-minute rounds and everything. While MMA, they have the equal rights because the championship rounds are the same as the men, 5-minute rounds. Regular fights is like 3-minute round, like three 3-minute rounds or 3 5-minute rounds. Blah. But at the end of the day, she has, to me, I'm watching, she's a talented fighter and everything, but I don't really I don't like watching her fight because it's not like, it's not, these girls that she's fighting are not really that good at the end of the day.
I'm
back. Sorry about that.
That's just my opinion.
No worries, Ranger. Last Monday I talked to Drew, and I didn't have a chance to ask you, but we're talking about Claressa Shields, who just had us pay-per-view, and the exact figures of that pay-per-view haven't really been revealed. We don't know exactly how well it sold, but she fought on the same weekend that the UFC fighter Amanda Nunes, who's a wrecking machine, and we know that she's interested in doing She's training for MMA. Claressa Shields is already on her way. She's teased us that she may make a transition into MMA. What about a super fight between Amanda Nunes and Claressa Shields strictly in a boxing match co-promoted by the UFC? Why aren't those two clamoring to fight each other any way possible? We know it's St. Patrick's Day weekend, St. Patrick's week. Conor McGregor took that chance against Floyd Mayweather, right? How about Amanda Nunes? I don't see any fear in Amanda Nunes at an opportunity like that. Your thoughts on that?
I don't think here's so that I can dive into this subject, because this is where some people might grab their knife and come at me with this one. Look, I did a video called "The State of Female Boxing / Sports." I encourage everybody to go watch it. But look, the numbers have not been released because the timing, in collaboration with the price, in collaboration with the event, was not the smart one. I get it that they're trying to push it, and all credit to them for taking that risk, because no risk, no rewards, right? That's at the end of the day, that's the name of the game, right? But the price for something that is relatively young was not the correct price. I do think that the numbers are not going to be great. I'm hoping that it is. Don't get me wrong. That's not what I'm saying. I'm hoping that they are. But at the end of the day, I don't think they are. In the subject of her making a crossfight to fight Amanda Nunes, she fights for the she is in contract with the IPF, International IFL, International Fighting. So I think that the money fight for her there is Kyla Harrison, who, just like her, is a 2-time Olympic gold medalist. But here's the difference. The difference is that Kyla Harrison is a 2-time Olympic gold medalist in judo. Kyla Harrison is a destruction machine when it comes to wrestling. And Kyla Harrison, all of a sudden, is becoming just an excellent stand-up fighter. If you can't get past Kyla Harrison, which, in my opinion, she has 5% in that fight to win that fight. If you can't get past Kyla Harrison, you ain't even going to make it to the octagon against an Amanda Nunes. So I think the money fight is with Kyla because Kyla's making, listen, the top pay for Claressa Shields before this last fight was $350,000. Kyla Harrison, and also like her, a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, is winning million point nine in tournaments for the International Fighting League. So I can see why Claressa Shields looking at this chick and she's like, why is she making that money and I'm only making 350 G's? I'm gonna go over there. Hey, as a fighter, I would too. I think that those two trains, Shields and Nunes, will not collide before Shields and Harrison do. The money for her is against Kyla Harrison. The bigger shot for her is against Kyla Harrison, and I still don't think she can go past Kyla Harrison. Kyla Harrison is too smart, and she knows how to feint, come to the mid-range, and grab those legs with her hands and swipe you. And once you're in the ground with a good wrestler / 2-time Olympic gold medalist judo, I just don't think. I mean, look, to make it even easier, Ronda Rousey, how successful was she being a bronze medalist as a judo artist? How successful? Now we're talking about a chick that's 2-time Olympic gold medals in judo and who's also a very good wrestler and who's also becoming a very, very good and educated stand-up fighter. Nah, she needs to stay away from Kyla as well for now.
Yeah, shout out to Boxing Historian 206 who says PFL Professional Fight League is a tournament-based system. And, you know, that got me thinking, it's been brought up on a lot of shows recently, how bad I would like to see the return of the Super 6 at 168 pounds. Because everybody is clamoring for the Canelo lottery ticket. And we've got Plant, we've got Benavidez, we've got Saunders with that first shot at it in May. But man, do I miss tournament styles in the sport of boxing. Because it gave us, the last time they did it gave us Andre Ward. And we walked away from it knowing just how elite Andre Ward was. A lot of people still have doubts. Some people still have questions, even though I may not be in that list, if Canelo really is the top of the food chain at 168. And now I want to transition into David Benavidez and the Showtime card this weekend. Because David Benavidez early on kind of worried me. And we know he's lost the belt on the scales. He's lost the belt without a loss. And he looked sluggish to me coming into this fight. In fact, I was very impressed with what Ronald Ellis was offering early in that fight. Now, I don't know if you guys saw. A lot of people were telling me they didn't even see the fight. They just caught the replay. So I'll start with you, Drew. David Benavidez, did he make a strong case? He walked away with a TKO win. He broke down his opponent, but did he make a strong case for you?
Ellis was a game opponent. Definitely was a game opponent for him and everything. But to tell you the truth, I really have to see him fight maybe a top 5 super middleweight. Because I'm going to be honest with you, I'm just tired of seeing him fight really like these guys that are like gatekeepers at most, if you look at it. But don't get me wrong, I think Benavidez can cause Canelo problems, but I just feel that it's time to step up to the top, near the top of the food chain now. And if that's just promoter issues or something making fights, like, you're not getting Caleb Plant. Caleb Plant seeks unification now.
Because he is a belt holder. And I see Ranger shaking his head in agreement about David Benavidez's what some people are going to criticize as soft opposition. Now, Ellis was a sparring partner to Canelo Alvarez, and Canelo just destroyed Yildirim, who was also a former sparring partner. Does he deserve that criticism, Ranger, that he takes on soft opposition?
I think that David Benavidez, for the type of fighter that he is, for the type of fighter that people are making him out to be, I do think that his opposition is definitely nowhere near close to Canelo Alvarez. I think his opposition has not been, nowhere near close. Now, here's what I got to say against David Benavidez, because I don't want people to misunderstand me when I'm talking about him, because I'm not hating on the kid at all. I think the guy is very dangerous. I'm in agreement. I agree with a lot of people that say in that division, one of the fighters that might give Canelo a run for his money is also David Benavidez. What I want people to realize is this. Compare the Canelo we got now at 168. The Canelo that it doesn't matter if he got in front of him a headhunter, the Canelo that with his upper body movement and head movement is able to slip shots, come into the mid-range, inside as well, and effectively work the body. The Canelo that inch by inch, in collaboration with his upper body movement, gets inches in and knows how to work in, down, up, mid-range, is not only focusing your body or in your head. He likes going to your biceps. He loves shooting that uppercut to your elbow. He absolutely loves planting the straight right cross to the center of your chest. Canelo does things people don't even know or pay attention to. They think Canelo is just a left hook to the body and a right hand upstairs. Canelo has big, and look, before you call me a Canelo fanboy, go to my channel. I got 150,000 videos against Canelo before you call me, but I have to speak boxing. And Canelo is not the same fighter he was 6-7 years ago. And even though that, like Drew was saying, he is a hair slower, the style of boxing he's implementing at 168, speed is not his best friend. Speed is not what he's needing, because what he has found is that he can inch by inch close the gap. And once he's in there, it's really hard to get him out. And if you do get him out with upper body movements, head movements, and feints, he finds himself right back in it. And once he's in, he goes to work. The thing with David Benavidez is has no legs, no leg movement. His inside game is not good at all. Dare I say, being the longer fighter with the longer arm, his power is not going to be there on the inside either, unless he repositions his body. And if he does, then he's risking to open himself even more for a shorter Canelo to put even more work to the body. I'm not saying Canelo is the boogeyman or invincible. By no means. Every fighter is beatable. And we've seen Canelo being unsuccessful on a couple of times already. I just don't think Benavidez is the boogeyman for Canelo. I think, and I'm going to put it in very drastic, exaggerated terms, Benavidez is food for Canelo.
Anybody want to call him a fanboy?
Let me read Andre Rodriguez's comment, because I'm not sure if he's speaking on Benavidez or Canelo, because Canelo, as some people say, he's very good now at cutting off the ring. It's something that he's developed. I'm going to argue that his legs are better than David Benavidez. And that's one of the things that concerned me early on in his performance this Saturday, was that he let those early rounds go to Ellis. And that's something he cannot afford to do in either fight with Plant, if that's the fight he gets first, or if he gets with Canelo. He absolutely can't give away those 4 or 5 rounds up front. It'd be a disaster for him. But Drew, do you see Benavidez continuing to have issues making 168, and this elusive fight with Canelo may not even happen?
Yeah, but here's the thing. I think he gets beat before he ever gets that fight with Canelo.
Bing, bing, bing. Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna tell you, like, here's the thing, man. And people can laugh. I don't care. If he get the Caleb Plant fight is the wrong fight for him, because Caleb Plant moves around a lot and boxes. That's David Benavidez's worst enemy as a fighter, to fight a pure boxer. And I think Caleb Plant gets an easy decision over David Benavidez.
Okay.
I don't think it's easy, but I partially agree with that. Caleb Plant, I believe what people see on Caleb Plant is they listen to his mouth, and you got to think of this. A fighter's always going to have an ego. A fighter's always going to talk about himself as the icing on the cake, and that's definitely Caleb Plant. The things he says about himself definitely don't match with reality. But don't take away from the fact that he is a very good boxer. Don't take away from the fact that he does have a very decent defense, and he knows how to move around the ring. And I have to kind of agree with Drew on this one. I do see a very focused Caleb Plant. And I have to include that word focus. A very focused Caleb Plant, possibly edging out a decision versus a Benavidez, basing it on jabs, movement and forcing Benavidez to chase him. Remember, Benavidez is a power puncher that has to be planted to implement his power. You're not going to get that against Caleb Plant. You're going to have to move and look for the boy and deal with the angles he gives you. And so I just don't see Benavidez. People say, oh, Benavidez, when he lets his hand go, it's so beautiful. Yeah, against a stationary target. Keep that in mind, people. The hands are beautiful against a stationary target. Now, he's got one thing. And he's got the power. A one punch can change the fight.
I want to ask both of you then, regarding David Benavidez. He's still years. Canelo's 30 now, and David Benavidez is in his early 20s. And some people are arguing that these aren't things that we can change. David Benavidez will not be able to overcome these challenges in his game. You mentioned his legs. He's very flat-footed, right? These aren't things that maybe or we can't change. I don't have a problem with his hand speed, but the leg movement, the movement of people that are going to give him different looks. And like you said, Canelo's not going to be a stationary target. Are these things either of you think that David Benavidez can improve upon in the next year or so?
You want to go, Drew, or you want me to go first?
It's up to you. You can go.
Oh, okay. Well, look, let's be real about this. Canelo's 30 years of age. And Canelo became a very good boxer in the last 5 or 6 years, which would have made him 23, 24 years of age. When the work is put in, you see results. Whether you see a complete turn of events or whether you see just a mild improvement. But if the work is put in and he gets himself a good agility trainer and he puts forth the work back to back to back, you can see an improvement. Will we ever see him being a Sugar Ray Robinson? No, that's not what we're wanting to see. We want to see just a little more elusiveness down there. We want to see that foundation to adapt to certain situations during certain fights. And let's remember, we're talking about Benavidez now, age 22, 23. Benavidez, for all we know, will be a destruction machine 5-6 years from now.
Right.
I also think I will add this in so that Drew can go. People need to realize Canelo is comfortable making 168. The question is Benavidez still comfortable and strong at making 168? And I'll go to Drew on this one.
Now, when it comes to his issues, can he improve on them? Yeah, he can improve on them. But the thing is, his trainer has to force him to improve on those issues he has, like to make him more movable and not flat-footed all the time. And that's very hard for somebody growing up being a flat-footed fighter and everything. But this is the time where you change him because he's under 25 years old and everything. Even though he's 23-0 now, you still can teach him and change some of his movement and everything. But the thing is, he claims he can make 168 for 3 more years. I doubt he'll be able to make 168 for 3 more years. He's failed to make weight already. Cost him his title. Do you think he's gonna fail? He's gonna miss weight again, and he's gonna say, "Oh, I'm gonna try to make 168 again"? No, that's gonna tell you need to move up to light heavyweight. And be honest, I'm surprised he didn't make the move up to light heavyweight yet, since he failed on the scale. But the thing is, he's trying to get a Jamal Charlo fight. Now, here's the thing. You're fighting somebody on the same bracket like PBC, but he's moving up to fight you. And that defeats the purpose. Okay, it's a money fight. It's a good money fight for you and everything. But that defeats your purpose because you need to move up in competition and fight these better super middleweights. You're supposedly, as a former champion, your best win is against Anthony Durrell. And clearly, if Anthony Durrell was the fighter that he was back in the day,
a former champ,
before his struggles, I don't think he beats Anthony Durrell.
I'm glad you brought up one guy, and I was ready to move on to this because I do like talking about David Benavidez and the Canelo sweepstakes because he's making a case, and the wild card is Charlo moving up to 168. Like, if he can't get a big money fight with Canelo, he's asking Charlo to move up to 168 and face him. Ra, is that a good move, trying to drag up Charlo? And Charlo could potentially be a fantastic middleweight champion. I mean, we've already saw how he disposed of Derevchenko last year.
I think Charlo is definitely a very good competition, but I think if there was ever a time to get the Charlo, it would be on his first visit to the 168 division. You don't want Charlo to come in and get comfortable at the weight division and allow his body to acclimate to the division. I think the very first time he steps in, that's the time to get him, right? But even with that being said, be careful because Benavidez has the power. Yes, we know. But Charlo is no punching bag.
No, he's got a lot of skills.
Yeah, he's no stationary target. And dare I say, he's got very decent power himself. I can see why people might look at this and say, man, these guys are coming down on Benavidez. But I challenge anybody to go and dissect what we're saying, right? Look at his fights in slow motion in YouTube or something. Because all I want to see is a Benavidez that improves. I think the fact that he's been dropping people left and right has him comfortable at where he's at. I can see him being like, well, I don't need to improve because look at what I've been able to do. But no, homie, you got to look at who you've done it against and then look at who you want to fight. Look who's the next step ahead of you and be like, what I'm doing, is it enough? Is it going to be enough? No, maybe I need to improve. And it never hurts to improve. The time to get Charlo will be on his first visit to 168. If he allows Charlo to acclimate, I don't think he can. I don't think his chances are less. Let's put it that way.
True.
Like, here's the thing, and like some people, like I really want some people to know, we may say positive things about fighters, but at times if we find something negative about the fighter, we're gonna say it. We that's the point of having a discussion about boxing, is to say positives and negatives and everything, because trust me, every fighter has a negative to them. They're not a perfect fighter. If they were a perfect fighter, then we would put them on the pedestal already. But there's no perfect fighter, no just thing. Even if he's undefeated or retire undefeated, there's no perfect fighter. But this is a move that can potentially backfire easily on Benavidez because Charlo does possess a lot of skills. The only thing that benefits Benavidez is he's the bigger fighter. Mm-hmm. He has the power, but at the same time, Charlo can move. Charlo has skills. It's a big money fight if you look at it. That's the positive about it. But the negative is that he's moving up to 168. And beating him, what does that do for you? You beat a former middleweight champion that his competition is questionable also. And you could say arguably the best fighter on his resume is Sergey Golovchenko. But Benavidez is not really shown against a prime opponent, opponent that's in the prime of his career, that's a top fighter in this division. He has not fought that yet. And until we see that, David Benavidez is still somewhat a mystery to many, many people.
Today, an article came out on BoxingScene.com that's got me very concerned and maybe gives me an idea and a reason to believe why Benavidez is talking about facing Charlo, asking Charlo to come up to 168. And the article says it's Canelo Alvarez and Eddie Hearn have a love affair going. Okay, quote, Canelo says, the idea is to continue to work with Eddie Hearn for a very long time. He is the best promoter in the world by far, said Alvarez to TV Azteca. I love working with him because he is a promoter who cares about even the little details, which makes everything much better. He never has a problem with his fighters, and he listens to the wishes of his fighters. It's great to finally work with this type of promoter. It is true we signed only a 2-fight deal for February and May. I like this way of working, and Eddie is happy to continue to work with me too. We will see. What's the likelihood of Eddie Hearn hammering out an agreement with PBC? Because Eddie Hearn's going to have to work with Al Heyman to get a fight done with Plant, Charlo fight, or Benavidez. They all are going to have to. Here's the thing: Canelo's got his own promotional license in the state of Nevada now, but from what it sounds like, he's liking what's going on with Eddie Hearn and Eddie Hearn's roster of fighters. Either of you.
So here's the deal. I spoke about this in the past when it comes to Eddie Hearn and the relationship with the fighters. And you have heard Eddie Hearn speak on the press conferences and the way he's expressed himself about the fighters. You can tell in the way his facial expressions when he's talking face-to-face to a fighter. How often, I'll ask this question to the chat and they can answer, how often do you hear a promoter say, I worked for the fighter, not the other way around? Whether he means it or not, how often do you hear that out of the mouth of a promoter? Dare I say almost never until you hear it from Eddie Hearn. The other thing is this. Let's remember one thing. Eddie Hearn, the reason that company has grown in the last few years maybe is because of the way Eddie Hearn works with the fighter. DAZN may not be the favorite child for a lot of people, but nobody can deny the way that they're growing. And the reason they're growing, listen, you cannot have all these fighters wanting to be under your banner unless you're treating them good, right? Look at what's happening with Bob Arum. When Rigondeaux killed his cash cow in Nonito Donaire, he made a public decision to destroy the image of the very fighter he was supposed to promote. When Teofimo Lopez destroys his secondary cash cow in Lomachenko, he made it a public decision to also discredit Teofimo. Now that Terrence Crawford only has one fight and might potentially leave his stables, he's also done the same thing. But when we compare that to Eddie Hearn, we hear Eddie Hearn that says, I work for the fighter. I'm their employee, not the other way around. I can see why Canelo or any fighter would say the things that Canelo said. As far as Eddie Hearn being able to land a deal with Al Heyman, the mysterious Al Heyman, I don't know, because he is just that. I'm not saying he doesn't exist, but he is just that. I have spoken with fighters like David Morrell Jr., the WBA champion of the world at 168, about this man. And they don't. A lot of these fighters don't even know him. Ask everybody in the zone whether they know Eddie Hearn or not. That's the difference. There's a lot of fighters in PBC that don't know. They've never seen personally an Al Heyman. I can tell you that for a fact. Not 100%, 1,000%. There's fighters that have never seen Al Heyman, yet they claim to work under him. Oh, you want to fight me? Go talk to Al Heyman.
He's like the Wizard of Oz.
Correct. But if you ask any fighter at the DAZN stables, I guarantee you everybody has shaken Eddie Hearn's hands in that stable. Everybody. And that's the difference.
Drew, do you think what Canelo was saying today in this interview with TV Azteca is signaling perhaps that he's going to stick around, work with Eddie Hearn, possibly to fight Boo Boo Andrade after the May fight? Maybe we won't see Plant this year. Maybe we're going to see an extension of Eddie Hearn and him having this agreement. Maybe we'll see him fight Boo Boo Andrade.
I doubt he fights Andre.
Because there's not that many Eddie Hearn 168 fighters, that are going to draw the attention for a big September fight. And Andrade is, again, another credible opponent.
That's another fighter I think beats Canelo, too. So,
and I wasn't setting you up to say that.
But here's the thing. This is what I got to say when it comes to this. Canelo really has options at the end of the day. I thought the best September fight will probably be him having getting Zoto Ramirez to move back down to 168. Gabriel Ramirez, former super middleweight champion of the world. But I think that would be a good fight. I think actually it could be a great fight, in my opinion. He's not the normal Mexican fighter. He's a boxer. He can another fighter that can cause Canelo problems if you look at it. But at the end of the day, this is why the best fights possibly are not going to get made, because promoters.
Yes.
Some promoters don't want to work with another promoter. Some promoter is going to badmouth another one. That's why the Tyson Fury Anthony Joshua fight didn't almost happen, because Bob Arum got a little butt hurt because Eddie Hearn tried to bid on the fight, on Teofimo's fight. Do you blame him? To have the chance to promote Teofimo Lopez on the zone, play him on the zone. But now, I don't know. The thing is, Eddie Hearn has just made himself out to be not only just a businessman, but to really open himself up. Say, hey, you ever need anything, you can hit me up. We can even talks to his fighters and everything, or even has generally cares about him and everything. And so it says, hey, I want to give my fighter, whoever that is, the best fight possible for him so he can make the most money.
Chicano Prophet in the chat. Shout out to Chicano Prophet. He says it's a good strategy for Canelo to not act like a plant fight is a foregone conclusion. It lets PBC know that Canelo's willing to pivot at any time if he doesn't like the terms he's hearing. So this could be some really genius strategy of Canelo just throwing out these little feelers today, just letting people know, hey, I'm the one calling the shots. But let's move on to upcoming fights, because it's been a long night for everybody, and I do appreciate everyone in the chat. Just move on to the gossip, the hot gossip and not gossip, whatever you want to call it. Drew, you just mentioned the heavyweights, Eddie Hearn. The big news today, the fight is done. It's signed. And then Top Rank comes out and says, whoa, you shouldn't have said too much, because they don't have a location. Did you hear about this, Ranger?
Yes. The fight is signed. Contract stipulates that 30 days after the signature of the contract, they should have already a location. Now, the reason they don't have a location is not because they're lacking a location. The reason they don't have a location is because there's 10 countries willing to pay up to $40 million to have the right of saying the fight will happen in my country. There's 10 countries fighting for this right now. And coincidentally, surprisingly, one country jumps into the competition that has never been involved in boxing. It's an African country. And I'm hoping, I would love to see this fight in Africa. If this country does have that money, which I believe they do because of the natural resources of that nation. A lot of people picture Africa as a third world thing, but no, Africa has some very wealthy countries within the continent's outline. Right now, the reason they don't have a location is not because they're lacking. It's because they got so much. It's like pulling to a buffet and you got 10 different varieties of cupcakes. Which one you going to go for when you can only pick one, right? It's going to take you some time to figure it out. And I think that's what the situation is right now. I think the fight will happen. I think the fight's already signed. And I think the location will be announced pretty soon. They only got 30 days. So that gives them 4 more weeks. But right now, it's just a matter of who comes up with the bigger purse for the bragging rights. And the 2 top contenders, that African country, Saudi Arabia, and I think Dubai. So, yeah.
And the African, which one was the African country? Someone said in the chat, Nigeria?
I'm trying to think of the name, but I will post the article where I read that at on Twitter. And good luck trying to pronounce the name.
Well, Andre Rodriguez says that AJ has family origins in Nigeria, and that I do know Nigeria is a very resource wealthy nation, And I wouldn't be surprised if that is one of the contenders. It is news to me, and I appreciate Ranger bringing that to my attention, that so many countries want to put this on. We know that Saudi Arabia got criticism, but it was a tremendous success financially for Andy Ruiz to take on Joshua there. Drew, are you excited that they at least signed, and you're going to get 2 fights out of these guys?
Yeah, I think the country that's going to get the fight is Dubai at the end of the day. I think it's neutral territory. I think that's the thing. I would wish the United States got the fight, but I think it has to be somewhat neutral territory.
I agree.
It makes more sense to have it as a neutral territory. So the Middle East is probably the most sensible place, or Japan.
Andre Rodriguez in the chat says that
a dark horse.
Andre Rodriguez points out that at least one of these 2 fights should take place in London. If not, it's a shame because obviously both of them are from the UK. But the fact that it's international, to me, is spectacular because it just reminds me of like the Thriller in Manila. This is the heavyweight division. This is the most closely watched division. This is the division that brings fans from all over the world. And it's undoubtedly yes or no, straight up answer. Is this the biggest fight we are going to see in 2021? Ranger.
Yes.
That's the biggest fight. Well, there you have it, guys. All right, coming up this Thursday night, I'm high on Ring City, USA. A shout out to my friend Jay Chaudhry, whose friend is one of the announcers over there. This Thursday in Puerto Rico, they will be doing it again. And let me just see. I had it up here who was going to be fighting on that fight. Alberto Machado will be fighting Angel Fierro. And guys, but if you haven't seen Ring City USA, I think they're doing a great job. It's somewhere in between ShoBox and the classic ESPN Friday Night Fights. You don't know which one of those guys is going to be a contender because they're all either former stars or future stars in boxing, and they've been extremely competitive. The last time they fought, they had the son of Fernando Vargas Jr., and his fight, although he didn't fight someone, it's his second professional fight, although he didn't fight somebody with a big name, he did tremendous numbers on Twitch. Like, because of his social media following, they were able to get thousands of people to watch Fernando Jr. on Twitch, which was so. I am very excited about what happens on Ring City USA. And if you don't watch them, make sure to watch the Leave It in the Ring roundtable on YouTube with D Styles, and shout out to everybody there. Drew, your thoughts on that, or Ranger? Have you guys caught on to Ring City USA?
I have not, to be honest with you. Unfortunately, when they come on, I'm either working or I'm out of town or something. But I really do hear that they're doing some good things.
They are doing some good things. If you're a fan of the ladies, Amanda Serrano will be headlining March 25th, and they kind of Ring City USA thought we were doing the thing over at Freddie Roach's gym at the Wild Card. Let's take a couple months and just televise from Puerto Rico. And it's awesome watching that. The last time they had a fight, there was so much humidity that they had to keep wiping the ring down, like literally mopping the ring down. I thought that definitely added to the excitement for me. Drew, any thoughts on that?
It's good content. It's good, like boxing, if you want to get that, it replaces that ESPN Friday night thing.
Yeah.
So it brings exposures to the prospects, so it's good for boxing.
All right. And lastly, I wanted to bring this up because April 24th is turning out to be like the biggest day of boxing and MMA in the month of April. Guys, we interviewed the Leave It in the Ring gang on D Styles' channel. We talked to Jesus Ramos Jr., who is a sensational prospect over at PBC. He moved up to 147. He's going to be fighting. His uncle, also Abel Ramos, will be fighting. Andy Ruiz versus Chris Arreola, the battle of the taco trucks, whatever you want to call that fight, on pay-per-view. Some people are going to say, I'm not paying for that pay-per-view. If you don't want to fight for this pay-per-view, ESPN is going to be putting on a free fight, and this fight card on ESPN is going to be fantastic. Edgar Berlanga and Xander Zayas, 2 future Puerto Rican stars, will be the co-main attractions to Navarrete. It's just announced that Navarrete is going to be defending his new 126-pound featherweight championship for free on ESPN. going toe-to-toe with the Zone. And if that's not enough combat sports for you, it looks like UFC, Jorge Masvidal from Florida will be in a rematch, in an epic rematch. So there's going to be there's tons of good stuff between now and April 24th, but I'm super stoked that these promotional companies are going toe to toe with each other. Drew, you're shaking your head like, you excited for this week?
Yeah, I am. Oh, they got news that Danny Garcia moved up to 154.
Rangers.
He's Philly, man.
I did ask you.
Give me that shit.
Hey, it is St. Patrick's Day, and we're talking about Puerto Rican fighters. And Xander and Edgar could be the future, but Danny Garcia is a former champ at 140, 147, and he's put it out there today that he has full intention of moving up to 154 and catching another title. Ranger, you're shaking your head. I was ready to wrap up this show, and I forgot that Drew wanted to bring up the Danny Garcia Philly says, I'm making a run for 154. I just don't have it at 147. He's having too hard of a time making weight. What do you think, Ranger?
Sure, I'll tell you what I think. I think it's the marathon effect. Here comes the fresh blood in the 147. Get the hell out,
Hey.
Get the hell out. And I got 5 or 6 fights left in my career. Might as well move up to a bigger purse and get it. And I'm not blaming him, but he's not going to be successful at all. I mean, have we had a Danny Garcia successful at 147? No. The power's not there.
The power hasn't been there, but he did snatch a title momentarily.
You just said it, momentarily. You think he's even going to scratch at a title at 154 against the Charlos? Against any of
and you bring him the Charlos because at PBC, the Charlo brother is the guy to have. But what about Castaño, the new champion? He's aiming towards Castaño.
I think he beats Castaño. Come on now.
You think he beats Castaño? I don't think he beats Castaño.
I think he beats Castaño.
Okay.
But Ranger brings up a good point. There's
if he
no
can't
hating
beat
on
Castaño,
him.
he ain't beating nobody in this division if he can't beat Castaño.
And he will not. And he will not beat Castaño. He will not beat Castaño because Castaño is not the guy that you just sit back and try to land one overhand right or one wild hook and knock him out. He's too much of a value puncher, and he doesn't give you the room to work. He's constantly in your grill. I mean, look at it. Look at it this way. One of the best fighters at 154, whether people like to admit it or not, it is Landy Lara, at his advanced age, who still possesses a very boxing skills, had a hard time with Castaño solely because of the simple fact that he doesn't give you enough room. And Lara is a guy that knows how to get out of tough situation. Lara is a guy that knows how to move around the ring. Castaño was on his grill all night long. He may not be a slickster. He may not be a beautiful boxer, but the thing is, his output compared with the room he gives you, that's where his success is. And a lot of people are sleeping on that. I don't think Danny Garcia beats Castaño. I have to be real with you on that one. And I love Danny Garcia. You can go back through all of my videos of Danny Garcia. I was the only, dare I say, I was the only YouTube channel when Danny Garcia versus Mathis was announced. I was the only YouTube channel back in them days saying, don't sleep on Danny. He going to take this victory. You're read the comments that I received from our Argentinian brothers.
It's crazy.
I love the guy.
I met Danny Garcia on a couple of occasions. And I actually talked to Angel on a lot of occasions at my old job. Personally talked to him.
Mm-hmm.
Like he came up to me most of the time when he saw me in my job because he knew I knew about boxing.
Mm-hmm.
And he would tell me about all these things that were going on. And then he would tell me about like what happened like back in the day when he used to root for and everything. And like it was good getting an education from Angel most of the time. But at the end of the day, hey, Danny's 33 years old, so he's getting older. And so it's gonna happen eventually that he ain't gonna be able to fight anymore. I just don't think Castaño is. I just don't. If he's gonna be having victories in that weight division, he's better go for top 15, top 20. I don't see him competing with a top 10.
Well, I have to say, it was welcome news that Danny Garcia finally admitted that he recognizes that he's not going to have any success at 147. He already fought Spence. He got that big fight. He shouldn't be in there with Bud Crawford. And maybe he will have the success that Miguel Cotto had moving up in weight by carefully handpicking the right opponent at the right time at the end of his career. It's possible. Maybe. And I don't fault Drew for having loyalty to the Philly fighters, but because he is a Philly guy. But Ranger brought up a good point. There's some other young blood in the welterweight division that I would not want to get in the ring with, and one of them is Philadelphia's Boots Ennis. And that's probably not, he doesn't want to be mixing it up with these young lions coming up like Virgil Ortiz, Boots Ennis, Xander Zayas, the future of the welterweight division. But I will be excited to see him move up in weight and see what he can do. I'll give him an opportunity. Drew, your final parts on the Shoe Shine on a St. Patrick's Day edition?
I ain't doing shit on St. Patrick's Day. I'll work.
Well, hopefully you don't get too smashed, but I mean, I don't blame you if you do.
I can't get smashed. I got to go to work.
You got to go to work. All right. Ranger, I always appreciate you having Ranger at Raw Boxing TV. One of my favorite YouTubers has been so helpful in launching our YouTube channel. Ranger, your thoughts on this past weekend and upcoming shows, boxing shows this week?
Well, listen, first of all, thank you for having me here. It's always a pleasure when I can, to be here. It's a pleasure. If you consider the help, hey, it's also my pleasure. I've been helped a lot on my comeback, so freely I've been given, so freely I will give. My thoughts is boxing is not where I would love it to be, but I like where it's at, and I like in the direction that it's heading. Another thing to the fans is enjoy boxing. Sometimes there's some fights, it's not worth fighting or losing sleep over the decision. Let's enjoy boxing for now. And I'm sorry for the hating channels, but Joshua versus Fury, biggest fight of the last 10 to 15 years.
Wow. And I want to thank everybody that was in the chat, everybody that participated tonight. If you're not already a subscriber to the Shoe Shine, please at least hit us up with a like, or dislike, a comment, or actually subscribe. So, we'll be on Monday nights after the Leave It in the Ring guys, David Dueñez and Emil Carr. I'm Dave from the 408. It's been a pleasure, and we'll check you guys out next Monday. Keep it boxing and love you guys. Peace.
Be good, brother. Be good.